Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast with Sandra J. Horton, the Growth Catalyst. Well, hello, everyone. I'm very much excited to be coming live on multiple platforms today. This is the Leadership Heart Podcast, and I'm Sandra Horton, the business success coach, helping leaders and organizations to change and to grow. And today I'm absolutely honored, truly honored to have an exceptional guest with us today. You know, we're all about leading from the heart to be that defender. And this individual, our wonderful guest, is Roy Smith. And Roy is absolutely a true defender of individuals, of many beautiful things. I'd like to introduce Roy before I bring him up onto stage, is that he is all about, and I love this quote that he provided to me, is that, you know, there are a few things you cannot buy in life. One of them is time and your life. They are the most valuable assets. I'm going to bring Roy up here as I continue to beautifully invite him up onto stage. Thank you, Roy. And I'm going to continue to invite others to get to know you because you are an exceptional executive protection specialist. You have a wealth of knowledge and understanding, your experience in law enforcement. You have created, you're a founder of an amazing organization that truly helps protect executives. Your experience spans, diverse roles, and you've worked with, and this is kind of intimidating for me, I have to say, Roy, the high threat criminals, and you were a gang task force officer on the southern border of Texas. Whew. You have assisted and been assigned to multiple Texas and federal task forces to combat gangs and drug trafficking. And, you know, these are powerful, you know, just so powerful professions to be doing that work. And now you've, you know, begun your own business. You have two different businesses. You have an executive, Viking Executive Protection Solutions, and you're the owner and president of Viking Tactical Security Group. So I wanted to make sure I honor all of those amazing things that you're doing, but your heart is also that you've developed a school guardian program for children. I know we may not touch so much on that today, but maybe for sure later. I want to welcome you to the Leadership Heart Podcast. Thank you, Roy, for being here.
Thank you, Sandra. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. I'm excited for this moment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I know there's lots of areas that we can, you know, really dive into, and our audience is very diverse. There can be leaders, aspiring leaders, executives who, you know, should take heed, should listen to what we're going to share today, because safety and security and protection, these are all things that us as leaders should never take for granted. So with this diverse background that you have, this expertise, can you share with my audience perhaps maybe your top 3 safety and protection concerns that really we all should maybe be considering in 2023?
Yes, that's a very good question. So in my experience, I believe that the top 3 questions that are being overlooked by multitudes of companies, corporations, as well as individuals on their personal level. Number 1 is the knowledge and understanding of what security really means and what it really looks like. Mm-hmm. Because that entails right there, opens up the door to the next 2, which is establishing a safety and security protocol system, which could include physical security as well as systems such as cameras and alarms. So that's the number 1, number 2. And number 3 is understanding how valuable that protection is. The more harder of a target, the more secure of a target, the less chance that there is going to be for any incidents to occur.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much difference and variety within those three areas that you said. And we're going to dive into these different areas, which I think is really important for whether you're watching this live with us now or on the podcast later. I'm sensing that there's a new mindset, there's a new way of being as a leader, as an executive, to really start to, hone in and understand these issues around safety and having that right mindset. Can you share with me, in your experience, those leaders, those executives who get it? How are they showing up? What are they thinking? What are they doing in order to really protect themselves that you're seeing that is working?
The good thing about a lot of executives that understand the need for safety and security is they're not afraid to understand how valuable key assets are within an organization. And that's the crucial thing, because a lot of people, they take an image of what they see on TV, what they see in movies, what they see on social media, and believe, oh, I'm not on that level. I don't need a big 6'2", 6'5" gentleman in a black suit walking behind me, or I don't need a armored car to drive me to and from work. I'm not that special. I'm not that much of a celebrity. It's not about that. And that's where I believe the Viking wants the approach, as well as other colleagues I have, is we want to educate people to let them understand you may not think that you're on that level, but when you are an executive, when you are in a position of promise and leading, you are on that level, because you may not understand where people are as far as how they feel about you that could pose an actual threat to your safety and security. With that in mind, those are the ones who understand that. So the education that we're trying to get is to let other people understand you are on that level. You do need it, and there's different levels of security that can be provided. And that's where another component of the education comes in, to explain to them the different levels of safety and security that can be provided by companies such as Viking Executive Protection, Viking Executive Protection Solutions, as well as Viking Tactical Security Group.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because, I know so many, whether you're women executive, a women leader, or, my male counterparts, there is a new definition of what an influencer means. I've had this experience where, what happens if someone's walking and, an unexpected accident happens. And then, we were talking about this a little bit earlier too,
Yes.
that asset is now gone. And where's all that property? Where's that intellectual property? You have to become more aware. You have to look at yourself differently. You may not be, some of the famous celebrities, like you're saying, on TV, but yet you are an influencer. You are that knowledge keeper. So in that mindset, in understanding that and working with individuals who get that, I'm talking about that one kind of executive per se. Have you found any kind of life lessons, that things not to do? Because those ones we've talked about, they get it. But there's a lot of
Yes.
people who don't get really this. And we're going to dive into those differences between protection and security in just a moment. But I'd love to hear from your kind of life lessons. And, maybe that might perk some ears up too, and make sure we don't do that.
The biggest thing is situational awareness. And that is it can be a catch-all phrase, but it is a good catch-all phrase because there's so much to be aware in all the situations around you. And that's the key point. It's applying little things here and there that can actually change the outcome of an event. Little things. One thing that I try to talk to many people about is, how do you position yourself when you go out in public? So I like to use the example of Starbucks. Not saying that Starbucks is the only coffee shop, but I just use that one as an example.
Yeah.
But because when people go to Starbucks, and if you walk into a Starbucks and you see people sitting down, they have their headphones on, they're focused on their computer, they're writing in their books, they're not paying attention to the situation around them. So anyone can come by. There's multiple people there. Sometimes there's even people that are homeless are in Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, your surroundings are very important. So how can you protect yourself without really being so key on everything? So there's little key things, such as, number one, don't have your back to the door. That's number one. That's the biggest thing. That way you can always, if you between your peripheral or your eyesight, something will catch your eye, and then you will look up and acknowledge. That is one very key point. Acknowledge someone who's walked into the area. Number two, where do you put your valuables? Some people, they have those small tables at Starbucks, and what do people do? They put their bag on that table and that chair in front of them. Okay, well, now you're focused on your computer, you're on your headphones, you're watching your movie. Now anyone can walk by and just actually act like they bumped it, and now they found your wallet, they found your card, they could pull something out of your bag, and now when you go to find it, it's already gone. So those are just two things that I try to teach people is, hey, look, why don't you put your bag by your side, underneath your chair? Now, even though that chair is open, but your valuables are right there. They're right by you in your close proximity. So that's one of the things that I like to try to express to people as far as situational awareness in that type of a public setting. Another thing is just understanding when you go to a place, when you walk into a restaurant, don't just be so fixated on the hostess table. Take a look around you. Look to see if you can see where the exits are. Where's the bathroom? You could be able to find that before you have to ask anyone. Or as soon as you get a chance, ask them. Ask the hostess, oh, excuse me, where's your restroom? Now you have an idea of exits, restrooms, and then once again, you apply that with not having your back to the door. Now you're more situationally aware.
That is so powerful. I, personally have not even thought about that. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do that next time I'm going into a restaurant. And I've never thought of not having my back to the door. So these are really powerful, suggestions that have worked well with, for any individual. I want to really kind of fine tune and kind of hone in a little bit around in an organization, because there's different areas that the difference between a protection and the levels of, like, say, personal security. So let's dive into that now, because I think I want to kind of really go into these. What are the differences, Roy, between just providing protection and, say, in an organization, and what are the levels attached to that? Maybe just let's dive into that.
Okay, so one thing I want to let everyone understand is security is synonymous. Protection is synonymous with security. It's not so much a keen on the word. It's more keen on the level of what you're going for. Security is like one huge blanket. Protection can be more like a scalpel, more coming in exactly to what you need. So on the security level, if we're talking about an organization, that can encompass such as card key entrances. It can encompass security cameras and door locks. It can encompass actually even a front attendant. But when you're talking about protection is more honed in on an individual or a group of individuals that need to feel more safe and secure at an event, at a location, when they're traveling, etc. So even though you can say, well, I have a security team, and it's the same thing if you say you have a protection team. But protection is more key to the individuals or the group, the small group that they are actually focusing on directly, and not in an organization as a whole.
Okay, and I appreciate that, because there's so much to kind of unpack in these areas. So it's important for those in a leadership role to understand those differences. So if you have an organization, whatever size that is there kind of like a point in the growth of an organization you say, really you should be starting to look at all of the protection of, say, your senior executives? And again, it's dependent on the context of where you actually work. If you're in aerospace or, a high tech, high risk venture where there may be, potential for sabotage or for, threats, to individuals, that's one aspect. But is there a kind of, in your experience, a great time in the growth of an organization that you should look at kind of not only the protection of your key executives, but also the security within the organization? Or do you look at it at the very beginning as you're scaling up?
I believe you need to start looking into it in the very beginning when you're scaling up. Security should be part of your scaling. Excuse me again. It should be in that game plan. It should be in that business plan. You never want to be reactive. You always want to be proactive.
Mm.
And there's a key reason why. There is a well-known ideology that the more secure you have as far as your building, your executive, the least likely chance that a situation can arise. So that's the premise. The problem is people look at security as a band-aid to fix an open wound.
Mm.
Break glass in case of emergency. Let me be reactive because now we just had a situation instead of being proactive to prevent the situation from occurring. So in the startup, it should be considered. It should be in your game plan, which could mean just, okay, you know what? We're going to install security cameras. We're going to install security door locks. On some level, security needs to be implemented. And then as you scale, as the company starts to grow, as you start to have influencers, now you need to look at providing protection. And you're absolutely right, Sandra. Protection has so many different levels. It doesn't have to be that 6'5", 6'2" gentleman in a black suit. It can be as low level as an actual security driver who's picking up the executive from their home, taking them to the office, making sure they get into the office fine, and that security driver is waiting for them. And then when that executive is done, they take them home. Now, the most vulnerable locations where accidents happen are either outside the home or outside of the business. But if you have a security driver, that area of vulnerability is now reduced. So now the executive can really focus on what they need to do for that beginning of that day so that they can be plan for their meeting, plan for their report, plan for what they're going to do as far as talk to a new program. And then at the end of the day, they can focus on thinking about, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this with my family. I'm going to do this with my friends because they don't have to worry about the drive home.
That is really important, and it really leans to that new mindset that an executive needs to embrace, especially in 2023. I hear this, like, in talking with many of my women executives, this is that conversation, that next level. How do we bring in these, supports to ensure safety? And because, our external environment is always changing, and you don't, again, this is my thoughts, kind of my story that I tell myself. We've talked about for individuals, how to look and have situational awareness.
Mhm.
We're now talked a little bit about, if you're an executive, you have an organization, kind of what to do. I want to ask more of a personal question if I can, Roy, because, at the Leadership Heart podcast, we're really this is such a passionate area. You're putting your life, in the line to support, to protect someone else. And, not everyone, and this is just a story I tell myself, is willing to do that. So can you share a little bit? You've learned and you've demonstrated this in so many different areas in this passion. What and when did you ignite that moment in yourself that said, hey, I'm going to go into law enforcement. I want to do this work and I really want to create the change to help people see executives, to look at these situations differently. So do you mind sharing a little bit about you and your story? And kind of, I just think I would love to hear that.
Well, the funny thing is when I was in high school, I can recall I was a basketball player growing up, and I can recall watching UNLV Running Rebels play in the NCAA tournament, and it was 1988, and I fell in love with them. I fell in love with UNLV. I looked them up. I researched University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I found out what the major component was for their college, which was hotel management. And I was all in. I was all in. And I'm going to age myself, but there was a TV show that used to air called Hotel. And it showed this very exclusive hotel in San Francisco. And there was a security director and a hotel manager, and they wore all these nice suits, and they dealt with all this type of situations, all these celebrities. And I was like all in. My eyes were just big like basketballs. And that's what I wanted to do, was hotel management. It wasn't until I got to college And I realized that hotel managers doesn't mean you're going to be at some exclusive high ritzy hotel. It
Yeah.
means you could be at any hotel. And so I quickly really changed my passion, well,
Yeah.
not my passion, my direction to more criminal justice. And that fit. And later on in life, I realized after I graduated from college, after I got my master's degree, after I worked in corrections and then finally got into law enforcement as a deputy sheriff, I realized that I was protecting people when I was in elementary school, when I would see someone being bullied and I'd step in and then I would be the one that would fight the bully. And then it happened when I was in junior high. It didn't happen so much in high school because I had more to lose, but it happened, early on. And I realized I've been wanting to be a protector for a very long time. And as I went through my career, as going from college, law enforcement, doing loss prevention, doing corrections, law enforcement, moving to different states, getting to different agencies, I realized that protecting people, protecting communities is what I wanted to do. And I was fortunate that I had a good mentor, and he showed me the next level of protection beyond being law enforcement in an agency. And it was on the private side in doing personal and executive protection. And he is one of the greatest men that I've met, and I honor and owe everything that I've done so far to him.
Oh, that's so powerful. And thank you for bringing out the importance of, getting a great mentor. Mentorship is so powerful. And, as I can speak my truth, as, going through my own personal journey and having mentors and now being a mentor, it's a powerful gift to give, just to be there and share your experience and your wisdom. And it's I really appreciate what you're doing. My son is also, I shared this earlier as well, is really one of those defenders of people. And it's organic. It's in your DNA, and it's just who you are as a person. So for anyone who has, young, aspiring, young people who are coming up, Roy is a living great example of, following your purpose, following your passion, identifying and knowing who you are, and then being purposeful. So you've had lots of different journeys to get to where you are. If you were able to give us, maybe what is your most proudest, most powerful moment in what you do? Can you share that with us?
Um, I have a lot of moments that I'm very proud of from every agency that I've worked for, because they've all been different. Working for a county sheriff, working task force down on gangs on the border, working with the federal government. I've had some incredible experiences, but I will say probably the one that registers the most just happened this past Super Bowl. I was protecting a couple CEOs out of the East Coast. They came to Arizona, and I was tasked with providing the protection with them for the Super Bowl week. And we as executive protectors understand that our job is to protect the executive. It's not to become their friends. It's not to become their pals. That's our job. And it's okay. It's okay if the executive doesn't want to speak to us, because we're there to protect them. So when I go to meet my client at the airport, I'm expecting, a quick greeting, and then we're walking to the vehicle. We're walking to get their luggage. When I arrived and I met the client, the first thing they said is, "We want to know about you. Tell us about you." And in the course of that whole Super Bowl week, I really loved how they wanted to open up to me, because they understood where I came from. They saw my bio. They really wanted to talk to me. And after the weekend was over, they have done nothing but just rave about the service that they had. And that really sets a tone, and it really makes me feel proud that not only did I protect them, but I gave them a sense of comfortability that they could just be themselves around me. and they allowed me to advise them on where to eat, where to go and hang out, and they enjoyed their trip. And since then, they've contacted me several times to provide security for them for business trips. And as soon as they call, I almost drop everything and I go, no matter where they are.
I'm so excited. I'm going in. Yay.
Yeah,
So
like,
this is a
we're
great
here.
segue,
I'm like, I'm
Roy.
there.
Yes, I'm there. Can you tell us, because you just started to explain some of the services that you actually do offer for my viewing audience. And if you are in this space, I would highly recommend you listen to Roy. So can you explain how do we access your exceptional website and how they get a hold of you? And what are some of the services that you offer?
Yes. So I'll touch on the services first of all. So we have two different components of our company. Our company is basically one big company, and it has two branches. One of them is Viking Executive Protection Solutions, and that provides executive and personal protection for high net value clients, as well as CEOs, as well as corporations, and as well as for events. So, but with that, there's a couple of caveats underneath that makes it more understandable for people to understand the different levels that we provide. We can provide a security driver, which is a professional driver that has been trained on security protocols, but is also an executive agent himself. So he can pick you up and take you from point A to point B, make sure you get safe. There's also what we call our concierge service. Our concierge service is more of an a la carte inclusive service. So it means we can make your reservations for you. We can go ahead and check into the hotel for you, get your cards, check the room, make sure the room is okay. So when you arrive at the airport and then we pick you up, we have already handled all of that. So all you have to do is just go straight to your room. You don't have to worry about checking in. So that's part of what concierge service does. We also have what we call our guardian service, which is, so let's say you have a youth that is 16, 18, maybe even 21, and they're going to go out to a party or they're going to go to an event, and you want to make sure that they're safe. Well, instead of the parent going and them feeling uncomfortable, you can hire one of our agents that will basically be a chaperone, can pick them up, take them to where they need to go, make sure that they're safe and protected at all times during that event. And then, of course, we have our executive protection level, which encompasses a lot of all of those key components into one. So you can break it down, or you can just have one whole service that provides for that. And then the other company that we have is Viking Tactical Security Group. And that is more on a level of providing another level of tactical security for high threat situations. Okay. One of the things that we do with Viking Tactical Security Group is we protect news media outlets as well as reporters when they're out in the field. So we're there to make sure that they are safe in their environment so that people aren't ruining their moment of work as well as their safety and security. The other level that we use Viking Tactical Security Group is for hospitals. Once again, we have threats all around us. So sometimes they need another level of security, and that's where Viking Tactical Security Group comes into. We are accessible via social media, Instagram, Viking TSG, or Viking_EPS, as well as our website, which is www.vikingtsg.com and www.vikingeps.com.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you so much, Roy. I really wanted you to share that with the audience because there is such richness. There's so many opportunities. And I particularly my kids are all grown up, so I'm going to date myself as well. But I'm thinking, for if this resonates, many parents who, have worked hard, they may have, accumulated some great wealth and these are great services that you can look at not only for your guardianship for your team that could be at risk. I mean, these are real potential imminent threats, in particular, wherever you are, living, there are different contexts, there's different situations that particularly the younger person can find themselves in. I think that's a great resource. I wasn't fully aware of that. I know some of people I've, been around have talked about it, but not actually had access to a service. So where are you located? Where do you tend to offer your services, Roy?
So we have our headquarters in Austin, Texas, but we are fortunate at the point where we have the ability to work in other states. So all we have to do is just know where the client is, or where the event is, and then once again we can work in multiple locations. But our headquarters is Austin, Texas, and we're very proud to be in Austin, Texas. It's a beautiful city, but we have work in multiple areas. One thing I do want to say real quick, is I know one of the things that dealing with security, a lot of people say, well, it's the cost. It's the cost. We can't afford it. It's the cost. We did an entourage service, which is basically kind of like an escort service for some young women in Phoenix, Arizona, that wanted to go out a night on the town, but they all wanted to go together. So they thought about renting a limousine. Well, one of them knew me from our gym that I worked at, and she talked to me, and they figured out that the price that it took for them to rent a limousine was no different than the price for two agents to go with them. We picked them up in our SUV. We drove them to the location, and they had protection during dinner as well as at the nightclub. Their drinks were safe. They got escorted to the
Love
bathroom.
it. I'm putting my hands up there because my daughter would be all over that, Roy.
So it is very affordable. It's not this astronomical cost.
Yeah, I love that. And what I'm really appreciating about this conversation today, the term when we talk about safety and protection can be a bit, just the word itself can be triggering. But what you've done is you've made it approachable. You've helped clarify. You've given some suggestions from an individual leader's perspective on, like, I am definitely going to be more aware, especially around the situations. Where do I, kind of situate myself at Starbucks or others? I have not, really ever thought about that, but that is something to come in, look around, know where I'm situated to protect myself. We shared about organizations and what to look at, especially if you're starting to scale. If you are, growing your organization, consider to embed this. It's one of those essential pieces that should be done at the infancy and then carried out through your business plan. But particularly to revisit it when you're, starting to scale, you're starting to grow. There's going to be gaps between the systems that you have in place. And I think that's a key piece. You've wonderfully shared a little bit about your passion. And I just, really advocate for people who are out there in my viewing audience. Ask yourself, are you doing what you are passionate about? And if you are, how wonderful is that? And that's where we should go to. And Roy is living example. He went through this amazing journey in law enforcement and doing different things, but found where he can make the greatest change, is what I'm hearing from you. So ask yourselves, how are you showing up? What have you learned from your experiences to where you are today? And then how are you going to decide now to start to live in that alignment? And then by living in alignment, you can then lead others. And that's exactly the 3 L's of conscious leadership, Roy. And you are doing that. And I thank you for being a living example, of someone who is authentic and who's doing this great work. So as we wrap up now with this podcast and the Leadership Heart podcast, are there any closing remarks, anything that's just kind of like churning in there that's like, I just got to say this, San?
Well, once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on your show. It is a great honor to be able to present, not only about Viking, but also just about the ideology of, as we say, taking it to the new era of understanding safety and security, and understanding that if you are an influencer, you are valuable. You have value in you. You have value to those around you, not only just in your family, but also in your organization or the organization that you represent. And that needs to be taken seriously. There's too many threats that are out there in today's public. There's so much going on in social media that we are not aware of, and that's another component that Viking can assist with. But if you take the understanding and knowing, I am an influencer, I need to start thinking about my own personal safety, then that is a blessing that I am honored that I was made able to reach out and express that.
Oh, thank you so much, Roy. And next time I do want to make sure that we have another conversation about all the good work that you're doing to really support youth and helping youth find their way through the work that you're doing as well, and being that living role model. So thank you everyone for coming, for checking in, whether you are live with us now or you are listening to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, all those wonderful regular channels that you find any of the podcasts that you love to listen to. Please remember to subscribe. Subscribe to the Leadership Heart podcast. That would be absolutely exceptional, so that you know you're going to be reminded that, hey, we're coming live every Thursday at 4:30 Pacific time. You take it to your time zone, usually for half an hour, maybe a little bit longer, but we really want to ignite you. I want to ignite your heart. I want you to really, truly listen to what these experts are saying and take it in and say, wow, when you finish today, how are you looking at security, about your own protection? If you're leading an organization, have you done this good work? Have you actually built in to your succession planning, security, or even anything that's coming to you from this podcast? Take action, write it down, and then get into really deploying it. I think that's the key too, Roy, is It's one thing to hear it, but then it's to take the action. So once again, thank you so much for being on the Leadership Heart podcast. Stay tuned. We have another amazing guest next week. I'm so excited to be able to share, but I won't now. So you have to stay tuned. And again, Roy, thank you for your time and for your heart. Greatest gratitude. So I'm just going to send you to the green room, and I'm going to just finish up. Thank you so much, Roy.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.